Je sais pas si c'est allumé. I begin? Okay. I'm a little bit small, so I need to have the microphone really near me. I am Bruno Landu from the University of Tours and UHA, the Institute for Food and Culture, Food History and Culture, a kind of sister institution of Coimbra, in fact. So I'm very happy to be invited to this 10th anniversary of DIATA. And I have the pleasure to introduce Virginie Amilien, who works in Oslo Metropolitan University in Norway. And I know her because we work together in some projects with also Coimbra University. And in the last project, Convivium, which had a great success with the European Union. Virginie works on what we call in France anthropology, but maybe it's slightly different in Norway. It's cultural studies or cultural history. And she now will speak for the first Plenary after the introduction lesson of Massimo Montanaro. So please.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. So, yes, Oslo Metropolitan University and from a department called the Consumption Research Norway. So this will give the tune of my presentation. So we go from medieval Italy to contemporary Norway and to feast, to consumption, food consumption. Also, I'm a part of a department named working about sustainable food and textile. And it will be some sustainability dimensions also in this presentation. So as you see in the title, it will be about food consumption, looking at everyday and festive food through the lens of food consumption. The subtitle, The Double Face of Janus, is a question I asked myself, and maybe we will be able to answer it. Actually, apropos questions, I thought I had 45 minutes to talk. I've been told that I had 30 minutes, so I propose I make the questions and the answers, so you don't need to have, no, I'm joking. I will try to cut, okay? I will try to cut. That's the menu of the day, my little menu. The research question, if there is one, is what does make the difference between festive and daily food or festive and daily meal? In a certain way, it's a little bit stupid and simple question, but we go back to this later. And to better understand, I will first have, let's say, some definition about what I call consumption, what we together can call feast and everyday food or festive food. And then we have two theoretical frameworks Obviously quite different, but actually I hope you see how they can merge. A grammatical approach when we see at food as language, and then what I call a frenzy approach, which is actually based on Georges Bataille's book, The Notion of Expenditure. So that was my menu, and as a sort of, yes, and maybe some data information. I have a lot of illustrations, which are my methodology or data. And here it's sustainability at first. I reused a lot of things from previous projects, quotes, images, but also archives and films. I won't have time, but at least I did it. So it's first about consumption, and before consumption, agree about what is feast, festive, and daily food. At a first glance, it seems quite simple because you have festive and daily. So they are very opposite, and you can say, okay, food you eat every day is daily food, and food you eat extraordinary conditions or situations are festive food. Let's go to the definition of feast in English. It's a large meal. Massimo Montanari spoke about it, so I won't speak so much. But festive food, maybe we can characterize it with joy, togetherness, something exceptional that you don't have in daily consumption, which I follow the Oxford Dictionary definition, something which is done, produced, and occurring every day. So you have this repetition, this routine. So if we take it very simple, it's weekdays and weekend, routine, special occasion, ordinary, extraordinary. I don't know if you hear enough or it's okay.
Yes.
But as Alan Ward put it, food is a compound practice. It means it's composed of many phases. And food is not only food, as we heard previously and as you all know. And actually, I won't speak so much about the social part that Carmen introduced quite nicely, I would say, today, or the religious part, or the symbolic part that also Massimo Montanari spoke about, but really about what consumption, what we can say when we speak about consumption. As the consumption researchers, we know that extraordinary consumption and ordinary consumption are usually defined through the fact that you have no limit when it's extraordinary. It's an exaggeration of everything. You have all heard about those couples who go to debt to have the wedding of their life, one meal that they will always remember. So you see the weight between the money you invest and what you want. But also in normal consumption. I remember that some informants could drive several kilometers to buy some Coke because it was on sale. But when they were on a vacation or had some visitors, so they could buy a very little bottle of Coke for a huge. So it's not is festive or not, because the same product could be both. Consumption. So the usual understanding of consumption is actually very linked to food. If I still follow the Oxford Dictionary, it's written the act of using, eating, or drinking something. But there is a first meaning in English, and the first meaning is the action or fact of destroying or being destroyed, to use up, to use until the end. There is nothing more. We see here the etymology in English, and here just a little parenthesis for people speaking French, but you understand later why I have to go through this because of Georges Bataille. In French, actually, we mixed those two meanings. Everything is called consommer or consommation. So it's a kind of faux ami when you are French. But if we go to etymology, we have consumere, which is to use until destruction. And you have to consummate, to bring to completion. In French, it's the same word. So you have to understand what is the meaning back to really understand. I say this because one of the first who actually used a kind of neologism for consommation, he wrote consommation, was Georges Bataille, that we will speak later about. So consumption in consumption studies, it's a very complex field. a field where people, in addition to acquiring things, express attitudes, preferences, belonging, values, and taste, are actually acting. So here I try to make a very complex and simple drawing where you have consumer culture and you see this interaction with routines, consumption habits, social heritage, rational choices, and I put a lot of plus because it's full of other things. It's the reason why when we study consumption, we used to divide it in 4 phases, just to make it easier: planning, acquisition, use, and disposal. So it's not only eating, it's everything you do before you eat, when you prepare it. And I took some example for you, so you have some illustrations. For example, planning, it can be the menu of the week. It's on this side, or it can be a list just before you go to the shop. You have a shopping list. That's planning, many other ways to plan. When you buy food, it could be on the internet, or here I have a quote from an informant telling that he tried to use a local organic shop, but actually it was more expensive and it was not so good, so it just stopped. Just to explain you that it's not only the choice of what you plan to do, but also what happens when you do it, when you actually buy. It's also using. Here you have some pictures from a project where we were at people and they were cooking for us. So we saw the whole process. Preparing dinner here is a way of using. You have many other ways. Sorry. No. And here an example for disposing. You have here a biography of eggs. We ask our informants to have a sort of history of some of the products they used. And Mona, she chose eggs. So it's very typical eggs. There are no label on it. How they prepare it, and also how they throw them away. So you have something about recycling, which is very important also. So now you have an idea about what we call consumption. It's not only eating, it's the whole process. But to understand this duality, to have a sort of dialogue between festive food and daily food, I go now out from my consumption perspective a little bit, and not to be in the social part, or the religious part, and symbolic part. We will consider food as a language. I took here 2 small drawings, hoping that it could help you to understand that food is communication. You have 2 children not playing together, one giving an apple, and then something is happening. I don't drive the rest to, you can imagine. So food as a language, I suppose for you here is quite normal. It's nothing new. It's nothing new neither to understand food in a linguistic perspective or grammar perspective. Many people did it before. And I will maybe begin with Roland Barthes, who began in the 60s, with this, what I would call a groundbreaking work that inspired many people. And his objective or his result was actually to see as food as conventions. I note here rituals and hierarchies, and especially the power strategies arising from the rules here. What I will keep from Barthes today is mostly this quotation: food has a constant tendency to transform itself into a situation. We go back to this later. I used Barthes for 20 years ago in a paper about Norwegian food culture. It was a kind of exploratory paper, and found out that we had at least 4 main registers in Norwegian food culture. It means 4 dimensions that give the meanings to almost everything you eat and buy for eating. The one was a place, and especially the opposition, it's very structuralist, so it's very rural and urban. Health, the health dimension, healthy, unhealthy, extremely important is the northern part of Europe. The social-cultural dimension, this is quite huge actually, so you have many examples here. It could be cultural capital, economic capital, age, whatever. And this one, the last one, the situation and difference between weekday and weekend. in Norway, in Norwegian food culture, this is one of the main dimensions explaining what you eat what. And then I have this moral register, which is the fifth one. I won't speak about it, but it's important to have it in mind anyway. So Barthes also inspired other researchers, older than me, as Mary Douglas, who wrote actually quite a lot about food. And here also, I just take a couple of quotes from her. If food is treated as a code, the message it encodes will be found in the pattern of social relations being expressed. And maybe it's the reason why I won't look at the patterns, social patterns today, because she really did a lot. I just took a few examples from her article, a pattern of week menus and weekend menus, which are actually quite similar to the one we have in Norway. Here you have the week menus at its climax in Sunday lunch. We also have it in Norway. The difference is that we only have one course in weekdays and two courses in festive days. But the pattern is quite similar. So I think that's something we can use, quite largely. Some quotes here just to give some illustration. A quote from a 40-year-old man. I like it very much because it's a man, and this one is responsible of food in the family. It's not so common in Europe. It's more common in Europe, in Norway, than in the rest of Europe. But anyway, in Norway, it's less than 10%. So still 90% case where the woman is, well, that was a parenthesis anyway. So I'm generally the one who cooks dinner, usually pancakes on Monday. So we have this structure again. Fish on Tuesday, maybe spaghetti bolognese on Wednesday, except if my wife does the cooking because she's very good at it. Leftover on Friday, shrimps, chickens, tacos. Friday is an innovative day in Norway. It's where you take things that you try a little bit, explore. And Saturday and Sunday, maybe meatballs or pork chop or perhaps fish. That's what we call traditional fish, traditional food. So that was just a quotation to see how we can use this grammar perspectives that Mary Douglas was speaking about. But in our case today, we go through food syntax. We have a syntactic approach. And actually, I just took the definition of syntax, which is the arrangement of words in sentences and phrases, and the study of the formation of sentences and the relationship of their components part. And I changed what I meant was the main part of a recipe or a meal. So words has been food items, the products. Sentences has been recipes, and phrases has been cooking practices or cooking competence. And we will try to understand the relationship between them and in which way this maybe make festive food or daily food. So there is a triangle. It's not a semiotic triangle, it's just some inspiration from here, where you have the food item or items, cooking competence and recipe. Let's try it in reality. We go back to our week menu with meatball, fish, potatoes. This one actually is more representative about what we have in Norway, because there is a difference between Saturday, which is the cozy day with a pizza, and Sunday, which is a traditional day. So you have 3 festive days in a certain way, 3 festive food. Friday, innovative. Saturday, a little bit more cozy with the family, and Sunday, more traditional. Let's go to meatballs, which is really traditional here. So I call it the food items. Also, we could also go further and say that meatball is constituted of meat and something else, but let's say that's the product. We need the traditional competence, and then we have, for example, meatball in brown sauce, boiled potatoes. Everybody knows it now because of IKEA, which is Swedish. But anyway, you have an idea about what it is. So here you have a cooking competence plus recipe, which makes it festive. The meatball alone is not festive. It could be a part of a daily food, as we will see later, but at different degrees, because it could be ready-made meatballs with ready-made sauce or homemade. So here again, it begins quite complicated. If we now take what I would call the more daily way to use meatballs, so you have here a sort of innovative competence, because it's not usual in Norwegian tradition to have meatballs in tomato sauce with pasta. It was one of the informants we had before we were cutting it. So in this case, the cooking competence makes the recipe daily, not the food items and not the recipe itself. Another empirical approach is and let's say smoked salmon. And scrambled eggs, it's a typical festive combination in Norway. You said previously, Massimo, that meat was a feast. It's absolutely the case in Norway, except from smoked salmon, not fresh salmon, smoked. Obviously, because in 18th century, it was a way to get a lot of money. We sold the smoked salmon to England, and it was a huge income. Now we sell salmon to the world, and it's still a huge income. It's the second income in Norway after oil, so it's huge. Anyway, what's interesting here for me is that, maybe we see here, this combination, which is very festive, so you have a combination of the food items itself, smoked salmon combined with eggs, it's the most festive you have. It loses totally its meaning, festive meaning, when you have it in a non-festive situation. I have quote from informants who had it in the lunch on your bread, piece of bread, a very standard piece of bread. And then people say, did you have party yesterday? Are you vegetarian? It's not normal. You have to explain why. You have to justify yourself. So it seems that even the product itself is not enough to define if it's festive or not. Goose liver, champagne are very expensive, and we know that they are very often the food item which is festive one. But smoked salmon is very cheap, actually. It's cheaper in Norway than ham or salami that you also can have on your piece of bread. So it's not only a question of money or how much money you use. And actually, I asked my good colleague, Alexander, just to check a little bit with, because I'm working qualitative with statistics, and to see if people were now maybe eating a little bit more of smoked salmon, because now it's not expensive anymore. And you see here very fresh numbers from 2023. How often do you eat the following types of topping? Ham, 4% say daily, salami 2%, smoked salmon or ground salmon 0%. We have to go to 3 to 8 times a year to really understand how it's working. So it's not expensive, but it's still festive food. We don't eat it daily. Here you have also the same type of statistic, but not so detailed with smoked salmon. But it speaks quite a lot how much money we use per year in dry, salted, and smoked meat, about 270 euros, and about 4 euros for dry, salted, and smoked seafood, in a country which is one of the main exporters of fish. So it's not really about festive food, but I think it's so interesting, I just have to tell you. So just to summarize, my syntactical approach is not working very well, because my conclusion is that it could be the food item, it could be the cooking competence, it could be the recipe, it could be a combination. So I didn't learn anything, just to be honest. So there is something more. And what is this something more? And I would say that it is what Barth called the situation. So it's not only a combination, it's when it is happening. So you have a new triangle here, and situation includes time and space. And here I try to put it in a more dynamic way. The dynamic of meals, the complex relationship between elements of food syntax and dimensions of meaning. A new empirical approach here, and I see that's 28 minutes, so if I want to speak about bataille, I really have to hurry quite a lot, but yeah. I won't hurry so much, I will just get. This one's interesting, is about porridge. So I won't read it, but the first one explains that porridge is the most daily thing you eat in Norway. This person is born in 1910. Yeah, that was the type of daily food. Then another one, almost the same age, a little bit older, explaining that actually you could have porridge as festive food, but then you have something more. You have cream instead for water, for example, or you have cured meat together. And my last example is a dravler. Dravler, it's a kind of milk which was very daily before, then completely disappeared and is now very fashionable as a new tradition. So I speak a little bit of this later. So if we take the porridge here, we see this complexity. The place could be home, it could be for wedding. Even now, we have green porridge for wedding because it's traditional. If it's home and daily, it's with water. If it's feast, it's with cream or something special every day. History, Christmas porridge, for example, is something itself. And we have transformation, what I call cultural construction of traditional food. Sausages, it's a wonderful example too. So it's very difficult to cut, Carmen, I'm sorry, but sausages is also very interesting because you see here, you have an idea about all the combinations we can have sausages. At the petrol station, in the forest, at the 17th of May, there's this little boy with a flag. It's a national day. And at the national day, the best food is a sausage in a pancake. Then we have it at daily food with some potato, smashed potatoes, or like a stew. So here again, we have one food item, and depending on where you eat it, for example, outside in the wood, it's top of festive food because you have gone for kilometers. What is better than a hot sausage? Even my children that didn't like sausage when they were small, they began to like sausages at school because they had it every time they were in the forest. It could be at the petrol station, like a treat, something you between the snacks. It could be with potato pancakes, with sauce, vegetables, and so on. So the situation combined with syntactical elements, because we saw that the syntactical elements constitutive were not enough to constitute a festive food, make the recipe festive. This is about the fact that you have the daily sausage and the feast sausage, which is, you have up there the geographical indication, you have a labeling certifying the quality, in case you don't know. I have a wonderful quotation from Jon Fosse that you obviously all heard about. When he speaks about well-smoked, salty meat, rice balls, peas, rutabaga, sweet, what today in Norwegian society would be defined as a very poor and humble food. For him, it's the best you can imagine, and I have it here. It's about emotion. He said the best in the world. Something that reminds me of my childhood, he said. So from syntactics to semiotics, we understood that festive food has with excess and exuberance to do. And it's the reason why I would like to speak at least a little bit about Georges Bataille. And especially the notion of expenditure, which is a little book he wrote in 1933. C'est bientôt fini? So a little book he wrote in 1933 before the cursed part of the other. Maybe I go further here. When he means that expenditure, so expenditure for him, it's only, it's not consumption, it's not a usual consumption, it's when you exaggerate in everything, okay? He called it unproductive expenditure. That's what he also called consummation, which is consumption meaning one in English, destroying. So expenditure has a social function in our society. And it was very interesting to hear Massimo Montanari earlier today, because he said that in the Middle Age, actually Bataille said that you can know more about the society just by looking at the unproductive expenditure. In Middle Ages, for example, in France or Italy, you had a lot of them. You have the cathedral, those huge monuments, you have the banquets you were speaking about, but then it disappeared obviously with Luther and Calvin, so the Protestantism, what is following Max Weber's The Beginning of the Capitalism. And what was the most important, it was not feast anymore, it was work, okay? And if it's work, so it's important to have expenditure as a social function to help us not to explode in our fears and angst for every day. So I just go through because I don't have time, but it was not so interesting. So I just would like to emphasize a little bit the importance of the daily routines, which has with order to do, and the expenditure, especially unproductive expenditure, which actually has a disorder to do. It's a way to better support the order of every day. But the dark side is the curse part. It's lux, the war. It's when we actually really destroy everything. But Bataille is not only on the dark part. He always also speak about the part which is sharing together, what I could call conviviality actually. And he speak about a mouvement communal, a sort of communion that people are together, sharing things, and completely crazy. It's the reason why he speak about the frenzy part. So if I try to not conclude, but maybe give a kind of resume, maybe? No, it's not resume in English. Anyway, resume. Of Bataille, you have consumere in one part, destroying, use up, nothing more, and consumare. All together, we build something. So I took two images just to illustrate a little bit. One of the best illustration of what Bataille said and of what a feast can be is Babette's Debut. I wanted to show you a part of the film, a short part, but it's 4 minutes, so I think it's for next life or next time, I don't know. You can find it on YouTube anyway. But in this part, you really see that, I don't know if you know the book, but Babette has had to leave France because of the Commune. She is a sort of refugee at her sister's in the southern part of Norway, a very pietistic Lutheran society where food is actually something which is fuel and nothing more. And she has been sparing money in about 15 years to be able to go back to France. That's her dream. But she decided to make a feast, a huge dinner with all the people. And at this dinner, not only is that you have the quantity and the quality, it's a crazy diner, like Michelin would dream about it, but we see that the people, the pietist people who only speak about God and frugality, began to awake a certain way, began to be friendly to each other, began to explode in a certain way too. And at the end, when she said to the sister that she cannot go back to France because she used the whole amount she had spare to go to France, she used it for one dinner. And the sister said, "You are crazy. What an expenditure." They say, "No, but I won a lot. I gave you joy. I gave you everything I had. I am an artist, I'm a chef. And now you say I have nothing, I have everything." This could be my conclusion, but I put it more synthetically here, where you have everyday food consumption that I would call a productive consumption, which is characterized by pragmatism, routine, simple things, healthy, practical, functional, economic, doable. Something like triviality, lightness. And what I would call, if we think about social relationships, maybe sameness. And then you have the festive food consumption, unproductive expenditure. And here we have the double face of Janus that you were waiting for. We have the gift on one way, sharing, attention, care, we are together, conviviality, cozy in a way, and we have the expenditure part, patience, sacrifice, waste, excess, performativity, and grandiosity. Here you have a lot of power relationships between the two faces of Janus. So we go back to consummate and consume. And I thank you for your attention. But before I would say that, if you read the program or the call of the conference that the DIATA group wrote, actually they say exactly the same. So I could have stayed in Oslo and say nothing, but we took the another way, and I hope this way could be interesting for you, like a path to something.
Thank you. Thank you, Virginie, for this methodological.
I'm not sure the logical, but
Methodist lesson from Mona to Babette's feast,
exactement.
and from Mary Douglas to
Georges Bataille.
Georges Bataille. We have time for questions, in fact.
In fact.
Yeah.
And if you don't have questions, you can see Babette.
Is there any question? Maybe you don't hear me, no? It's okay. No question?
Okay, so I tell you more about Bataille.
I have one.
I just...
It's not a question, it's just a precision about Georges Bataille.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, Georges Bataille is an historian, in fact.
Okay.
He was an archivist of the École Nationale des Chartes in France. And his thesis was on chivalry, in fact, on knights. So it's another point of meeting, I think, interesting one. So if you
I forgot to present him. He's a French intellectual from the last century. 20th century.
It's an important man.
I thought it was.
Okay. Massimo.
Thank you very much. It was really interesting. I want to ask you if you agree with what Roland Barthes says about the food that go to be meaning more than. And he says that this happens only on the plan of transformation and not production. So I don't agree with this. Even on a plan of production of food, you can find a narrative that is communication, that is meaning that you give to food in the moment when it is produced.
That's true. But maybe it was not at that time. Maybe it's a way of thinking about production we have now because we are more detached. We have more distance with the way food is produced. Well, it was in the 60s, so it was the beginning. I don't know, but I agree.
You think it is not true now, but it was true at when Barthes wrote.
Maybe I think it could have changed. Because we have now, especially through marketing, labelizing food. In 1960, food was very little labelized, only wine. For example, all the geographical indication came in, at least in Europe, in 19th. Of course, in Italy and France a little bit earlier, but even cheese, it was in the 80s, so it was after Barthes.
This is true, but as Bruno knows, this was a little bit true since the Middle Ages. To have something produced in a place, in a way that gave a particular meaning to the food.
From antiquity, in fact, in a day, yes.
Actually, maybe even Barthes says the opposite. When he's studying wine and milk, he speaks a little bit about the production of wine in France.
Yeah.
So maybe it was a sentence just to emphasize the fact that consumption is, and here I agree, is even more important when you speak about meanings than production. But for me, production is also a part of consumption. So consumption studies is almost everything, taking into consideration production, of course. When you plan and choose your product, you choose the production you wish to have. So I see it from a more holistic perspective. But it was an interesting comment.
Is there other question? No? Yeah.
Thank you for your presentation. I am from Brazil, and I'd like to know your opinion about the process of globalization. If it can change this impact, because I understood about your position that when we have a daily food and when you use this food in a special day, it can change this way. It can be the inversion.
Yes, I would say yes. Here I would say that the situation is actually the one which is making the work. So it could completely change.
In Brazil, we used to talk raio, like a boat, gourmetization.
Yeah.
And everything could be called like special food because daily could be Sunday every day.
That's even more complex.
Yeah.
Now we try to keep on the festive, but of course in our society it's quite often that we have what we call festive food daily, and maybe on Sunday people are fasting because they ate too much, so it's more complex. Yeah.
Another question? May we conclude? So thank you very much, and thank you to Virginie.